Okay, what the hell? Oh, I did not see this until this afternoon. I wanted to give a big shout out over to the folks on mlive.com and in particular Ansar Khan. Because earlier this afternoon, he went out there and published this article that I had the pleasure of reading. You could go out there and click the link in the description to read this yourself. Red Wings' Nate Danielson takes Patrick Kane's lofty comparison to heart. Updated September 26, 2024, 3:41 p.m. Of course, today we are talking about the Detroit Red Wings, and there are a few guys that you could say we can talk about from yesterday's showcase. We had talked about Marco Kasper in the video. We had discussed Eric Gustafsson and Ville Husso and some of the other guys that made themselves known in the Red Wings' first preseason outing against the Chicago Blackhawks. But what I wanted to do today was talk about a guy that was not playing in yesterday's showcase. It is none other than Patrick Kane, a guy who still is not going to be practicing nor playing with the team, it seems, for tomorrow's other preseason game against Chicago. Who really knows what's going to happen there? I mean, there are some conflicting reports. People are saying that he practiced, others are saying that he's got a rest day. Who really knows? I'm not too sure on what's going on with Patrick Kane and his status right now, although he was at training camp and he did have the highlight of him scoring that shootout goal, so I'd like to think that Kane is good and ready to go and he's just taking a little bit of a rest here, but at the same time, it probably would be a good idea to give him some opportunity to get chemistry with Tarasenko, right? Who really knows? Either way, all speculation as to Patrick Kane's playing time aside, there was a really interesting set of comments that he had made about prospect Nate Danielson, and this article has the scoop. Danielson made quite an impression on Patrick Kane after only a handful of informal skates and the first day of training camp last week. Danielson is really impressive, Kane said. I skated with him a little bit when I first came into Detroit this summer. A lot of skill. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Connor Bedard. The way he plays and the way he stick handles and shoots, I know he's a high-end prospect as well, but he looks like he's got a bright future. Okay, yeah, let's just let that sink in a little bit. Patty Kane, of course, I think, if there's anybody who's going to be able to compare any other person on the planet to Connor Bedard, it's Patrick Kane. Because when I think about Connor Bedard, everything that we had in his draft-eligible season heading into 2023, it was actually in the same mold as a Patrick Kane. I remember it was Cam Robinson of Elite Prospects who said that, in his opinion, Connor Bedard was like almost a perfect mix of Patrick Kane and Austin Matthews. Think the size, the handles, the finesse, the skill of a Patty Kane, but with the shooting ability of Matthews. That, I think, is like a perfect descriptor for what Connor Bedard was and is as a prospect and a player. Lots of skill, lots of spatial awareness, incredible hands, and a shot that Patty Kane never really had in his own repertoire. Like, if Connor Bedard wins the Rocket Richard a few times in his career, I think that's pretty likely. Patrick Kane, though, while he did have himself quite a few highly productive goal seasons, I mean, he maxed out as a 46-goal player, it's not bad in the slightest, he didn't or doesn't have the wrister, the flex, the torque that Austin Matthews and Connor Bedard can get on their shafts when they use their stick and fire the biscuit into the basket. So for Nate Danielson to be compared to Connor Bedard, I feel like Patty Kane's like one of the only guys who's capable of saying that, because if anybody sees Bedard and sees the skill that he has, if there's anybody who's able to understand that the most, it's probably Kane. So for him to look at Danielson and say that he sees a little bit of that in Nate Danielson's game, that's a really big amount of praise. And honestly, something that caught me off guard heading into this article over here. Let's go out there and read what Danielson had to reply here in this situation. I don't know about that, Danielson said. Connor is a pretty special player. It's cool to hear a compliment from Patrick Kane, though. He's obviously someone that I look up to. Just having him here, he's someone I like to try to prick his brain, see what he thinks, what he likes to do. He's kind of like a Sidney Crosby to me, Patrick Kane is. He's someone I grew up watching and idolizing. I think I've watched his shootouts thousands of times. It definitely gives you a bit of a confidence boost hearing him say something like that about you. So, Danielson, of course, I mean, he was drafted in, 2023? Which makes him 19 years old, I mean, he's young. So obviously, Nate Danielson, when he was growing up, when he was getting into hockey, Patrick Kane was like the best player in the league at that time. So obviously, there's a connection there. Danielson has the handles, he's got skill, he's got point-producing ability, he's really smart, and I think heading into this upcoming season with Grand Rapids, because I don't see him making the regular Red Wings this season, there's going to be a lot to look forward to out of Danielson here. I mean, he's a top 10 pick. He kind of has a lot of pressure on his shoulders anyway, but still, having those comparisons to Connor Bedard definitely makes things a lot more real, I would say. Also, you have to acknowledge, too, that Danielson did start out his WHL career playing with the Wheat Kings and doing all this stuff. He was the captain of the Wheat Kings by the time Bedard got drafted, so if there's any one of the prospects as well that has had the experience of playing against Bedard the most in junior levels, I'd say it's probably Nate Danielson, since he was also a WHL stud. Let's go back over onto the article and read what Stevie Y has to say about Danielson. He's another guy who's in really, really good shape. He takes really good care of himself. He trains hard, very solid two-way centerman, smart hockey player, he skates well, he's a good defensive player, but he's got a very good shot, and we expect him to produce offense. If Nate Danielson has even 75% of the shooting ability that Connor Bedard has, we're looking at maybe a 30-35 goal player every single year. Mark my words, it's that good. Danielson said his game as a whole has grown in the past year. I think it gives me confidence going into the games knowing that I can be a difference maker, Danielson said. I put on some weight and I got stronger. That's something that'll help me this year, especially in the corners with some of these defensemen. I think an extra couple of pounds makes a big difference, helps with winning battles and little things like that. And ultimately, I think that's the expectation for Danielson, right? Two-way centerman, good compete levels, good athleticism, kind of in that Marco Kasper mold, although as we did see yesterday, Marco Kasper exploded offensively during certain parts of the game against Chicago. If Nate Danielson can do similar things, then the Wings may have a lot more to show for at center long-term than we might have initially anticipated. So much for drafting the same player in Kasper, Danielson, and MSB a few years in a row. What I like about this article on MLive, though, is that it also has some comments from other people. Alex DeBrinket said this about Nate Danielson. I think his hockey IQ is really high. I think he knows where to be on the ice. He can really find open spots, and he's smart with the puck. It seems he's in the right spots defensively, and it leads to a lot of offensive chances. He already plays a pro game, so it's fun to watch him. And finally, this is what Derek Lalonde went out there and said about Nate Danielson. Hockey sense, feel for the game, puck support, game management. He's a really nice player. I think still understanding some things of the game, though. He seems to have a little more puck play issues in camp than he did last year. Oh, okay, that's an interesting comment. I think that's part of the natural development, but obviously there's a lot of upside. He seems to be a gamer. I'm excited about seeing him in games. Last year in camp, he had an okay camp, and they really started to flourish when the games came around. It doesn't surprise me the way he thinks the game. That is not super optimistic from Derek Lalonde, but I guess from the coach's POV, he has to have a little bit more reservations when waxing poetic about prospects, so take those comments as you will. But for now, though, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about Patrick Kane comparing Nate Danielson to Connor Bedard? Yeah, no fluff around it. He compared Danielson to Connor Bedard. How does that make you feel? Do you think the comparison is accurate or not? Do you think this is worth thinking about? Or is this just a player gassing up his own teammate and prospect? I think because it's Patrick Kane, we have a lot more reason to believe it, or at least take it seriously. This is not some random bum saying, oh yeah, no, he's like this, he's that, he's really good, he's better than me. Like, no, it's Patrick Kane. And if anybody knows how much skill it takes to be effective in the National Hockey League, who can compare somebody to Connor Bedard, I think it is Kane. He's number one up there on the list. I think next up it'd have to be like Austin Matthews, right? If Austin Matthews said that a prospect had a shot like Connor Bedard, then I think that's like one of the only human beings on the planet capable of making that comparison. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Danielson, Bedard, Patrick Kane, and everybody else. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.